You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog presented by the Fantasyholics. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I am here with my co-host Rydawg. And Rydawg, we are talking some Oakland A's baseball today. So how you feeling?
Feeling all right, Doc. This is we're winding down our mini-series, sadly, but we have plenty more podcasts to come.
And you didn't sound very optimistic about the Oakland A's, which I'm very disappointed in because I just told you before we started recording, I love the Oakland A's, so I am more than ready to go for this one. I think there's a lot of value, and we talk about me loving my value. I think there's a lot of value on the Oakland A's roster, so I'm excited about it. And we'll jump right into it. Essentially what we're doing, if you haven't tuned in before, we're going through the projected lineup, projected rotation, quickly going over a few impact prospects that may make their debut and giving their fantasy impact. So if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasyholics on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Fantasyholics1. We also had our new website roll out, thefantasyholics.com. Tons of content going up there, so make sure you check it out. But without further ado, let's go right into the Oakland A's lineup. Leading off for him is Marcus Semien, playing shortstop for him, currently going pick 82. I think he's very underrated. He was actually a top 25 player last season, scored over 100 runs, had 25 plus, scored 100 runs, 25 plus home runs, about 80 RBIs, stole a few bases. He's just an underrated player overall. 82, I think, is fair value for him. I guess I'll say for me, that's one of those guys in the A's lineup I'm not crazy about. I think last year, not that it's a fluke, but I don't expect him to perform as highly as he did last year. He hasn't been known for that over the course of his career, but it's a good situation. He's got a lot of really talented batters behind him in that lineup with Laureano, Chapman, Olsen. So he's going to score a lot of runs. I think 82 is fair for him if you're looking for a guy that scores a ton of runs. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's crazy value, which might seem a little insane considering he was a top 25 player, but I think realistically he's more of a top 70 or so player. So that value for him is fair.
Yeah, I agree. Semien is a really consistent shortstop, I would say. It's fair value for him at pick 80. I think he's a decent shortstop, and if I waited, he'd be one of the guys, that I'd wait to draft if I had to.
Yep. Number 2 in that lineup is Ramon Laureano, who I was just saying is my boy. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about Laureano. He's in the outfield for him, currently going pick 100, which I think is crazy value for him. And before he got injured last year, I was just telling you, he was a top 25 player in head-to-head leagues. So if you can potentially get, I won't say he's a top 25 player. I won't get that crazy. Maybe I'll say that off camera, but I won't say it in front of everybody. But I definitely think we're at worst, he's a top 50 player for fantasy leagues. So he's a 20-20 guy. He's going to get you right around 20 steals, 20 home runs in a full season. And we've mentioned it several times. In today's game, it's very hard to find 20-20 guys. And once again, he's at the top of a very good lineup behind or in front of, I should say, Chapman and Olsen, Kana, Chris Davis. Good hitters there. So he's going to score runs, steal you some bases, hit you 20, 25 home runs, drive in some runs. I love that. I kind of compare him to your boy Starling Marte. I think that's the kind of career he has long term, that he puts up solid 25 and 25 numbers for the next 10 years. Maybe not 10 years. We'll say 6-7 years. But I kind of see that being his best comparison. So at pick 100, if I was to tell you you were going to get Starling Marte at pick 100, I think you'd be pretty excited.
I like Laureano at 100. I guess I'll talk about him now. It's good.
Fine.
It's good value. He's in a decent lineup. I like Laureano pick 100 also. I mean, you can get the original Starling Marte in the top 40, and then you can get Laureano So boom, you're getting two guys with 25, 25.
You're getting Marte, baby Marte. That's what I'm going to call him.
Baby Marte. It is good value. I'm on board for it. I honestly didn't realize he was going that late, to be honest. He's young and he's got a super high ceiling as well. So I pick 100 for a 25 caliber guy. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, and a lot of drafts got delayed. I saw his ADP start to creep up as we got closer to fantasy drafts. He was around 120, then he was moving towards 100. Then it kind of stalled with a lot of drafts not happening. But I think he would have continued to move up a little bit. But even if he was the 80th pick, it's still good value.
Oh, for sure.
And then behind him, playing third base, is Matt Chapman. This is another guy. I think him and Laureano offer the most value in the A's lineup. And we've mentioned Chapman's name in podcasts previously. With him and Donaldson, I say, provide a lot of value at third base. He's currently going pick 98. Once again, he scored over 100 runs last year. I think he has potential to hit close to 40 home runs. Didn't quite get there last season. Driving 90 or so RBIs. So I really like his value at pick 98, especially if you miss out on one of those top few third basemen.
Oh, for sure. You know, Matt Chapman does remind me a lot of Josh Donaldson, just in player comparisons in general. It's just ironic that they're both going so late in drafts. So, you know, third base is it's really not as deep as people think it is. I mean, there's a couple guys that have third base eligibility, but you'd rather plug those players elsewhere. So, I mean, Chapman with his ADP is at right now and the value he offers, it's great value. And I think Chapman's a 25, 100 guy. And I think the one thing this lineup needs is to get Chris Davis back going. And this could be a very, very dangerous team.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And we'll talk about Chris Davis. Yeah. Number 4 in that lineup is Matt Olson playing first base, currently going pick 69. He hit the ball very hard last year. He has 40 home run potential in my eyes. I kind of question whether or not this is value. I think if you're looking at the next tier of first baseman after Alonso and Bellinger, that Olson's one of those guys I start to target. 69 for me is probably fair. I wouldn't say that it's crazy high or crazy good value, but I think 69th spot for him is fair value for Olson.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really, really fair value. It's not something that's like a steal or anything. 69 is about, the middle of the draft in the top 100. So you're going to get what you're going to get at pick 69 for him.
Number 5 in that lineup is Mark Canha. He's currently listed in the outfield for him. He also has first base eligibility. Currently going pick 243. I know a lot of people that like him. I mean, he's a guy, he's going to hit you 25 home runs. To me, he just doesn't have a lot of upside, and I like my value in upside, and he doesn't really check those boxes for me. If you're in a league that values on-base percentage higher than others, he's a guy that I really like. He had a very high on-base percentage, great plate discipline. So if you're in a league that values on-base percentage, he's a guy I might target. But besides that, pick 243 if you like him. I can't argue with you, but I think his upside is kind of capped.
Yeah, I agree. He's not offering really much for what he did last year, but I pass on him. He doesn't offer much upside. I completely agree.
Then number 6 in that lineup is a guy that you mentioned previously, Chris Davis. We had an article come out about him, maybe 2 months ago now, as one of our breakout guys. He's currently going pick 186. And I can't argue with that. I think that's tremendous value. And I've talked about this with Nelson Cruz previously. I really wish he had eligibility beyond utility. That's a little unfortunate, and I think it can clog up your lineup a little bit. But, when you're getting a guy that has 35 home run potential when he's healthy, I really can't argue with that. He's a guy that can hit 40 home runs when he's healthy. So if he stays healthy, I'll take that chance on him at 186 all day.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, he did have a really, really bad year last year, but he hit the ball really hard for what it's worth. He did strike out a little bit more than he typically does also, but I expect him to bounce back in a big way, and that's tremendous value. If I can get him and Cruz late, and then if I'm in a 3 utility starting lineup, I'm plugging those 2 right in my utility. I mean, the extra position would be nice if they both had outfield eligibility. It's sad that they don't, though, but you're still going to plug a guy in your lineup that's going to hit you 30-plus home runs.
Yep, I agree. Bottom half of this lineup here, not anything too exciting. I'll mention their catcher, who I like. But number 7 for him is Robbie Grossman in the outfield. Number 8, Sean Murphy catching. Number 9, Anthony Kemp. There's going to be several guys that get outfield at bats for him. Robbie Grossman, Stephen Piscotty. They have Pinder on the bench who kind of moves all around and plays every position for him. Anthony Kemp, who they have listed as our second baseman right now, was in a pretty fierce competition in spring training with Jorge Mateo and Barrito. So we'll see who gets the at-bats there. I like Jorge Mateo if he gets consistent at-bats. He's a guy that can steal 40 bases if he is in the lineup. But of the 3 that are listed, Robbie Grossman, Sean Murphy, Anthony Kemp, I personally like Sean Murphy. He's currently being drafted 240 at the catcher position. He reminds me a little bit of Will Smith, except going around 100 picks or so later, which was one of the reasons I really like him. But he's a top 35 prospect in baseball too. He's a very strong defender, which doesn't matter for fantasy purposes. But, I think he's going to be a guy that gets you a pretty solid average, 15, 20 home runs in this lineup. Even though he's at the bottom, he can probably still drive in 70 runs. So if I don't get Real Muto, I wait a really long time for my catcher. So or even Gary Sanchez. So if I don't get one of those top few catchers, I guess I'll say I wait a while for a catcher. So Sean Murphy's in that category for me.
Yeah, and Sean Murphy has a really high ceiling too. He hits the ball extremely hard. Sean Murphy is a really, really underrated catcher out of all the ones we've talked about. He did not get the recognition I feel like he deserves. He's like the one guy in the lineup. I like this lineup in general a little bit, not as much as you, of course, but I think if I had to choose one of my favorite under-the-radar guys in this lineup, I think it's going to be Sean Murphy. He's just going to be a really fun catcher to watch in 2 years.
Yep. And I always like those younger catchers, too. Catchers, we talked before about first basemen lasting longer in their careers. Catchers don't really have the same fate, so I like to try to take a young catcher. The injury concern's not quite there as much. And I really like Murphy too because he's not really competing with anybody else for catcher at bats. Similar to fantasy football where you see a lot of running back by committees, you see a lot of teams have catchers by committees. So you don't have that problem with Murphy. So I like that too.
We got to start that trend, hashtag catchers by committees.
That's essentially what it is though when you think about it. There's a lot of guys they play every other day or I know Noah Syndergaard for the Mets had his guy, and Tomas Nido, that was his catcher. So, you have a lot of that. So it's really a committee now.
Yeah, even when the Dodgers, when Kershaw would always have his catcher, even though prior to Will Smith, of course, they would always catch Barton every other day. Except the pitchers have their certain catchers they like.
Yep. So let's move over to the rotation then, and they have a lot of interesting names in their rotation. Number 1 listed, we get all of our lineups and pitching rotations from Roto Champ. So if you have a problem with how they're listed, take it up with them. Number 1 in that rotation is Mike Fiers. He's currently going pick 235. Probably the least interesting name in this rotation. Pick 235. He's going undrafted for the most part. Really low upside. I don't really have much to say about him. Not really going to draft him. I think the A's are an 85-win team, so I can argue that he's a good streamer in the right situation, but beyond that, I'm not really drafting him.
Yeah, I don't see myself drafting him either.
Number 2 in that rotation is Sean Mania, currently going 166. I see a lot of depth charts have Mania listed as their number 1 right now, so we'll switch him if that makes you happier. But he's currently going pick 166. He has a ton of control. He actually kind of reminds me of Soroka a little bit, your boy Soroka. But Mania has a lot of control, but he has a solid K rate. He gets about 1 per inning. I think he has a lot of potential. He's going to have an opportunity to get some wins with the A's. So I like Mania at pick 166, and I think he offers good value and good upside.
I completely agree. He does. His ERA won't be as low as Soroka's, though. But
that's true. But he'll get more Ks. Get both of them.
You'll get more Ks. Yeah, get both. You get the best of both worlds.
Number 3 in this rotation is Frankie Montes, going pick 123. I wrote an article about him probably about 2 months. It was the same with that Chris Davis series right around that time. But I wrote an article about Montes. I love Montes. He obviously had the 80-game suspension last year. He's going pick 123 right now. And when you look at his analytics, I mean, they are ace-like. I mean, I legitimately think that if he stays healthy and has a season like he did last year, I'm not saying he'll win the Cy Young, but I think he'll get some votes. to be in that conversation. I think he has that much upside. So I really like Montez at pick 123. I mean, you really can't get better value than that.
Yeah, Montez offers. He does it all. I think his ERA he can control to the extent he has control of his pitches. He can go past a typical 5 innings. So when you look at him, he does it all. He just has to not get suspended for 80 games.
In my opinion, probably if he didn't get suspended 80 games, I think we'd be talking about him right in that Castillo, Giolito, Paddock category, going around that range. But I think people are scared because of the suspension, but that doesn't scare me off.
Yeah, nothing scares you.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I don't like mice, just for the record.
No one likes mice. I'm not a fan of snakes either.
I mean, I don't think I've really seen a snake in the wild before, but that would freak me out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Number 4 in that rotation is Jesus Luzardo. He is currently going pick 128. Once again, I think that's really good value for him. He's a young guy. He has ace potential. He's shown that in the minors. The big thing is the injury concerns. I actually have been selling him in a lot of dynasty leagues, which might seem crazy because he's a younger guy, but people love him. I mean, he's a top 10 prospect. I've had a lot of people overpay for him in leagues. So, the injury concerns just really worry me. I don't know if he's going to have a really long career. In a redraft league, I'll absolutely take him at pick 128. Like I said, he does have that ace potential. So if you can grab that, if he gets injured in the middle rounds, it is what it is. It's not really a huge loss, but his upside at pick 128 is huge.
It really is. And I think that's the one thing that kind of scares me is this rotation is very, very young.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it, I think Mike Fiers is probably the oldest guy in the rotation. I mean, he's probably in his early 30s. I would have to guess. I don't know off the top of my head. So there's not many veterans in this rotation. So I hope they have a lot of young pitchers. And I think out of the young pitchers they have, I think Luzardo is probably my favorite going forward. He's just very fun to watch. He was good in the minors as well. So I'm excited to see when he gets a full year what he'll do.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's definitely exciting. I hope he can stay healthy, but we'll see.
Right, I agree. Yeah, health is an issue.
Number 5 in that rotation is Chris Bassett. They have listed. I don't really think if AJ Puck is healthy that Bassett's going to be in the rotation, so we won't talk too much about him. Bassett, when you look at his analytics, had really poor pitch movement, kind of got knocked around a little bit. Even though if you look at his ERA, it wasn't terrible, but his analytics aren't very promising. So we'll focus a little more on AJ Puck, who's top 50 prospect in baseball. Currently going pick 218. He's actually on Yahoo. He only has relief pitcher eligibility, which is kind of interesting. He's another guy. If he's able to stay healthy, he has ace potential. But I actually have less faith in him staying healthy than Luzardo. Puck really hasn't been stretched out either, which I think is a good point to make. When he was starting games, he was really only pitching 5 or so innings. And I think as he starts to increase to 6-7 innings plus, that the injuries might pile on more than they already have. So I love him. He's currently going pick 218. So at that value, I absolutely love him. If he gets injured, really no harm, no foul. But he has ace potential. But I really need to see him get stretched out before I say he jumps up into that next elite category.
Yeah, and I said this about Sean Murphy, but I'm just going to take it back. This is my favorite player in this whole – I forgot about Puck. I actually forgot about Puck for a second. And I'm going to tell you why I like A.J. Puck a lot. He reminds me – his height and the way he pitches, it reminds me a lot of Randy Johnson. I mean, you don't see a big pitcher – with a very strong arm anymore. You really don't. I mean, it's better to get the injuries younger. It really is. I can't really say much about the injuries. He's still a younger guy. He's still a young pitcher. Get whatever you need to get out of the way now. And then that way you're mid to late 20s and early 30s. You're healthy. You got the Tommy John surgery. You got whatever you needed out of the way. And you can just go out and ball out. And this kid is going to be fun to watch. I think he's going to be with the Pearson scores in my eyes. I really do. If I had to pick one pitcher after this top 3, I think it's A.J. Puck because this guy is going to be fun to watch once he gets healthy.
Yeah, no, and you said it, when he gets healthy, that's my biggest concern with it, and I hope that he does. I think he's more of a dynasty play, in my opinion, than a redraft guy. Just like I said, Randy Johnson used to be able to pitch a complete game with his eyes closed, and I don't know if Puck's ever going to have that ability. I get the comparison there, especially with their size, but
right.
Redraft leagues, I'm more hesitant. I mean, 218, absolutely fire away, take them all day, every day, but I'm interested to see because, I mean, realistically, let's say that Montez, Luzardo, Puck all stay healthy and play up to their potential, and then you throw in Mania, who I think is really a top 3 starter. He's your 4th guy. I mean, this could be the best rotation in baseball if they live up to their potential. I won't say that it is, but if they live up to their potential, I really think they have that kind of ability.
No, I completely agree. I mean, Puck, I was definitely expressing from a dynasty standpoint for the record. I wouldn't take him in a redraft, but at 218, it's great value. But Puck, he's going to be fun to watch, and I hope he can stay healthy and prove me wrong because the thing is, these managers, they babysit these guys, and I call it the babysitting when you bring a guy up. They don't let him go the extra mile. They let him go their 4 or 5 little innings. They don't want to overthrow these young guys too much unless they look like, they're healthy and they got their control down. And that's the thing. Randy Johnson could throw he could throw shutouts with his eyes closed, 9-inning shutouts. But I mean, I think with the size and how hard he throws the ball, it's just looking at a mirror. It really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, we just have to wait a couple of years for Puck to really see what he can do.
Yep, definitely. Then their closer is Liam Hendriks. He's currently going pick 99, which is right around the range. If you want to take a closer, have at it. Have a good time with him. I've taken Hendriks a few times. I've seen him slip a little further than this. Once again, I think people get really unexcited about Oakland A's players. That's just my theory, is that they're just one of those organizations. You're like, oh, the A's suck. But, I mean, they have a very solid roster that I really think has a ton of potential. So I like it. But let's move over to their impact prospects. And the A's are one of those interesting organizations. They're a playoff caliber team. Their farm system currently is ranked 14th. That's probably going to drop pretty significantly next season because a lot of these guys are ready to graduate. They have Luzardo, who's going to be in the majors, Puck, Murphy. I mentioned Mateo, if he's able to get consistent at-bats. Other guys that may make their debuts this year, Dalton Jeffries and James Caprillion. Those 2 guys are most likely going to be bullpen arms for them just because their rotation's kind of full. But if Puck or Luzardo struggles with injuries, or anyone else in that rotation for that matter, you might see them step in. And, this is a good team. And I said it before, the only time I'm really taking a chance on a rookie that gets called up is if they're with a really good team and a good organization with not a lot of pressure on them. So I'd consider those guys as streamers early on if they did take a rotation spot. But we've kind of already talked about Puck, Luzardo, Murphy, a lot of exciting names at the major league level for them.
I completely agree. Yeah, we kind of broke down the prospects because that's what the A's are. They're an extremely young team outside of maybe a handful of players, and they're going to be fun to watch. It's always more fun to watch guys when they're in their youth, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I love pitching. I still think that pitching wins you a championship. So that's why I like them. If those pieces come together, maybe I'll say it's going to be the Oakland A's and the Rays there, my 2 teams.
Your 2 teams? Your 2 wildcard teams?
That would probably be the lowest rated AL championship series of all time if it was the A's and the Rays. Nobody wants to watch those 2 teams. MLB wants to see the Yankees in their championship series, the Dodgers, Red Sox, those big names. They don't want to see the A's and Rays playing one another.
They don't want to see my Nats repeat it?
Yeah, the Nets are okay.
Yeah, they're solid. They're not the Rays. I mean, who do you have winning the division? We've already discussed the Astros yesterday, so who do you think going forward? Do you have the Astros winning the division, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I mean, the Astros rotation is good. Their lineup is loaded. Their major league roster is so loaded that it's just hard to argue against them. But, I mean, I will say that I think the A's are a wild card team, but I would not be surprised if that rotation stays healthy. I think they could pass the Astros, which seems crazy, but I think that if those guys all pitch to their ace potential, their rotation is much better than the Astros, and I think they could compete with that lineup. So I won't pick them as my winners, but I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now we were talking about the A's as the favorites.
Yeah, and I think, they know it's going to surpass the Astros at least anytime soon, like you said, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the Angels can do this year as well. I think this AL West division after the Astros for that second place or second wild card, it's going to be a fun race.
Not picking the Mariners?
Maybe 10 years from now. Not the Rangers either, are we?
No, I think the Mariners are going to be in the running when we do that episode for the shortest one, so we'll see how that goes.
Let's see if it can beat the record.
So anything else you want to sum up with the A's on?
No, I think I talked a lot about AJ Puck enough for that.
And I talked about Laureano enough for probably the next off season as well, so I don't even need to bring him up for the next year. So that's all that we have for the Oakland A's today then. Once again, thank you guys for watching. This has been Doc and Dog presented by the Fantasy Holics. If you don't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1. We also launched our new website, The Fantasy Holic, so make sure you check that out. We have tons and tons of articles coming out each and every day. And just thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.